What kind of people are we Americans? We do have quiet, tree-lined streets in most of our communities. Millions of us go through life without ever hearing a shot fired in anger or even having a fist fight. We've had no Hitler. We have not liquidated an entire class, as the Soviet communists did with the rich peasants in the 1920s, and the Chinese communists did with the landlords in the 1950s. We have not lined up people before firing squads, as Castro did in Cuba. We do not torture our political opponents. At worst, we appear at times to try to bore them to death. We're surely the only people in the world who would have something called National Brotherhood Week. There's no reason not to, I suppose. We have weeks of every other kind. But National Brotherhood Week moved the satirist Tom Lehrer to compose and perform a song.
White folks hate the black folks, and the black folks hate the white folks. To hate all but the right folks is an old established rule, but during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, Lena Horne and Sheriff Clark are dancing cheek to cheek. It's fun to eulogize the people you despise, as long as you don't let them in your school. The poor folks hate the rich folks, and the rich folks hate the poor folks. All of my folks hate all of your folks. It's American as apple pie. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, New Yorkers love the Puerto Ricans 'cause it's very chic. Step up and shake the hand of someone you can't stand. You can tolerate him if you try. The Protestants hate the Catholics, and the Catholics hate the Protestants, and the Hindus hate the Muslims, and everybody hates the Jews. But during National Brotherhood Week, National Brotherhood Week, it's national, everyone smile at one another hood week. Be nice to people who are inferior to you. It's only for a week, so have no fear. Be grateful that it doesn't last all year.
It could be argued that it would be more appropriate if we had a National Violence Week rather than a National Brotherhood Week. In fact, we don't need one. We have instead what might be called National Violence Year, every year. To understand how we came to that, we have to go back to our beginnings.
Part of you don't tell nobody about. You know what I'm saying? From that inside, that dark space inside you. It's from that darker, that inner side of you. It's from the dark side. Bow, bow, no more knocks at your doors. You're just about to explode, hit the floor. I come from a trip of bloodshedding, spreading my head and straight from Armageddon. It's nowhere to run, nowhere to hide. Once you get slapped by the dark side, I was attacked, not clever to react. Small as a peep, I was deep in solar facts. My escapade leveled swell, blew up, fell. I grew up 5 blocks from hell. I'm used to seeing the grass grow black. Medalists pushing pedalists, kids to push cracks. Murderers leaving their traces. You're wasted, permitted destroying their human races. Fuck it, I'm bringing ruckus to where it's the APB out on the next Frederick Douglass. I'm sort of a saint, you think I ain't, with skills to paint. With my third eye, you trained. From the dark side.
We expressing feelings, and we expressing our dark feelings. So my feelings may be deeper than his, or his feelings may be deeper than mine, but it's all an expression of a feeling.
From the dark side.
Small, so full, I'm using revelations as my crystal ball. I see more hordes of war, more too small.
When the American Revolution ended, the newly declared independent American citizens found themselves inhabiting a thin strip of tideland civilization with a deep, dangerous, and lawless forest lying to the west. They wanted that land. So did England, France, and Spain. These Europeans hired Indians to fight for the land that really belonged to the Indians. The Indians frequently had only the basic age-old weapons common to all primitive men, so the outcome was never really in doubt. The white Americans pushed west. The Indians who were unfortunate enough to be in the way were defeated and robbed of their land and their pride and very nearly their existence. The frontier, birthplace of a kind of violence that was peculiarly American, became a part of our national experience. The frontier was a lot of things, but perhaps above all, it was the cowboy. Like all national groups, we have distorted our past into romantic adventure. This is how the cowboy was supposed to look, and this is how he really looked. And this is how he often ended up looking after he got mad. On the frontier, in large areas for long periods, law enforcement was almost non-existent, and a mystique developed around weapons. Several generations of men made them the first and most vital of their household gods. Winchester, Colt, Browning, Derringer, Smith & Wesson, Remington. And our language became heavy with allusions to guns. The man was a straight shooter or maybe hot as a pistol, possibly trigger happy. The impetuous would shoot from the hip and give them both barrels. Another, what an insult, was gun shy. The frontier was rarely at peace. It was big, there was wealth to be had in its vast woodlands and open plains and in the rich treasures under the earth. But you had to fight to get it, and sometimes you had to fight to keep it. Early in our history, a new dimension of violence was added, a source of wealth that was itself an act of aggression, the slave trade. It made many people wealthy, but it killed more, black and white, than it made rich. There were other imports. The new country needed laborers, and they came in waves. The English and the Dutch, the Irish and the Germans, they all came, each willing to work or to fight. In the cities, there was plenty of opportunity, at least for fighting. The New York draft riots in 1863 developed new dimensions in the fine art of disturbing the peace. Members of street gangs, jealous of the free northern blacks and unwilling to be drafted into the Union Army, rioted in the streets, and for 3 days the gangs virtually ruled the city. It was kind of a prelude to the picket line labor versus business outbreaks of the 1920s and 30s. The Civil War freed the slaves, at least legally, but effective emancipation came in a northward migration of the newly freed blacks in the 1870s. They were looking for jobs that for the most part did not exist, so they settled uncomfortably into slums that became ghettos. It was as though every day was the first day in school, and each of them was the new kid in town.
For a time, social scientists described the wave of violence that struck our cities as an epidemic, and they identified some of the causes: poverty, broken homes, unemployment. But as a rule, epidemics do their damage, spend themselves, and are gone. However, the level of violence in our cities shows no sign of subsiding. For some, violence has become a permanent part of the fabric of life, a way of solving problems, achieving status, or simply surviving. Sociologists call it a subculture of violence. In Detroit, as in other American cities, most of the inhabitants of that world are young, poor, and black. The 1970 census put Detroit's population at just under 1.5 million people, fewer than half of them black. Today, blacks comprise a majority, perhaps as much as 60% of the total. The cause of the population shift is no different here than in other large cities: the retreat of the white middle class to the suburbs. One cause of that retreat, the fear of crime and the violence that accompanies it. As darkness approaches downtown Detroit, fear becomes almost palpable. In the space of a few minutes, these shoppers and storekeepers will vanish from Woodward Avenue and hurry to what they hope will be the safety of their homes.
That's the firm Cover Hall. Meet code 2400.
As the night wears on, the cries for help come more and more frequently.
208 at 9848 Livernois, and that's on a hold-up alarm.
Detroit's violent crime rate is 5 times the national average. Police say that in a 24-hour period, they can expect 2 homicides, 4 rapes, 28 assaults, and 50 armed robberies. In the emergency room at Detroit General Hospital, the night's casualties are beginning to arrive.
Open the real wide.
This young man was shot from a moving car. He has a bullet in his head. This man got into a fight in a bar and was stabbed in the back. Most of the patients treated here this evening had been assaulted with guns or knives or fists, and most, but not all, were black.
Assault in the vicinity of the Golden Ducket and Rock.
This man, too, was shot in the head. For a black man, the risk of being assaulted with a gun or a knife is 20 times greater than for a white. While blacks commit a disproportionate share of violent crime, more often than not, blacks are the victims as well. But the same statistics that connect violence to race also connect it to poverty, to unemployment, to bad housing, bad schools, broken families. Study after study conclude that violence does not spring from the color of a man's skin, but from the way he is forced to live. If society excludes him from the mainstream, he may turn to a ghetto world that gives him the identity and status he needs. Criminologist Marvin Wolfgang calls it the subculture of violence.
The subculture of violence suggests that using physical aggression, assaulting, is not only a tolerated way of solving some problems, but is an expected and sometimes encouraged mode of response.
If you begin with a set of circumstances, racism still exists in our society, blocked out economic opportunities, and you realize that young blacks are aware, one way of responding to them, of adapting, if you will, is to choose modes of violence as a way of being a man. If you can't be a man by having a lot of money and power, You can show that you're a man by being tough, by pushing people around. So accepting violence as normal in everyday life is kind of an adaptation to the economic and racial conditions of our society.
Okay, read us what you have on this one.
There were about 20,000 murders in the United States last year. About half of all victims and offenders were black, although blacks comprise only 1/10 of the population.
One in the right thigh.
This is Detroit's morgue. The subject of the coroner's examination is a young man who was shot to death by a security guard in a supermarket. The episode began with a trivial argument and escalated into a bizarre tragedy. The security guard was carrying 2 guns and used both of them.
One in the shoulder, 2 in the neck, 1 in the back of the arm. Yeah, this may be through and through right here. Or is that 5, 6 shots, 6 entrances. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4 exits. 1 slug in the anterior chest. So there's 1 more to be found.
The dead man's sister witnessed the killing.
My brother didn't give him no reason to do this at all. And after he shot him the first 2 times, when my brother was laying on the floor, he said, "God damn, man, I didn't do nothing. Why is you doing this to me?" And so the security guy just kept on standing up over him, shooting him. I know he was dead before I left out the supermarket, because he started shooting him up here in the temple. And after my brother said, "God damn," he didn't say nothing else or move. He just was laying down there in a puddle of blood.
A terrifying fact about murder in the subculture of violence is that it is so commonplace. In some ways, this was a typical killing. There was an argument, then a scuffle. A knife was drawn. A man died. The dead man and his killer were friends. In 3 out of 4 homicides, victim and offender know each other. Also, the killer and his victim had been drinking. Alcohol is involved in a majority of murders. Some aspects of this killing are less typical. For example, the murder weapon was a knife. Knives are used in fewer than 20% of homicides. Most murders in this country, at least 2 out of 3, are committed with firearms, usually handguns. To the detectives who must deal with this crime, the circumstance that is most familiar is that both the victim and his killer are black. Black men kill and are killed at rates 10 times higher than whites. For urban black males between 20 and 29, murder is the leading cause of death. Interracial murder is relatively rare. In 9 out of 10 homicides, killer and victim are the same race. But interracial robbery is common. And as interracial robberies increase, so do interracial murders. In most such killings, the victim is white, the offender black. Police assume that this man resisted and was fatally shot. But because they could find no witnesses, they could not be certain about what happened here. Probably, they never will be. But as a rule, murder is no mystery. In fact, murder is solved more often than any other major crime. Police make arrests in 80% of all homicides, usually within 24 hours. Few cops see more murder than Detroit homicide detectives. They point to the easy availability of guns as one reason for the steady year-by-year increase in killings. They estimate there are 500,000 unregistered handguns in the city, about one per family. In the subculture of violence, a handgun is standard equipment. Night after night, witnesses tell a familiar story, the story of the casual argument between friends or relatives that ends in gunfire.
I heard shots. I got up and ran to the door, and there was another fella hiding in the doorway. I said, "Who's shooting, Cool?" He said, "Jimmy." And as he was telling me that it was Jimmy, Jimmy passed me, got his gun out, just firing. And I took off. I said, "Who is he shooting at, Cool?" He said, "Joe." And I took off and ran around the corner, and he would shot Joe up again. And then he was just beating him with the gun. They sick. They think the best solution is a gun. They don't talk. They got a gun. They the ruler. That's why they have it. They the ruler. Why should I talk to you when I can just shoot you? That's how fickle their mind is. Why should I fight? Why can't I just turn my back and walk away from it? I got a gun. Why should I? They sick. The people today is sick, and all of them is just sick.
This is the real killing in Chicago and Detroit and Cleveland and New York. But this is the killing that doesn't even make the obituary pages of the paper. This is the one that only makes it in the statistics department at the end of the year. They say 918 or 818 or 760. This is the guy who's only a number because he's standing in for 10 to 12,000 Americans that we don't give a damn about at the individual level or even at the aggregate level. We keep score, we lament, we don't care.
The current wave of violent crime is well into its second decade. While we have deplored violence, we've not done much about it. Perhaps this is because confronting the problem of violence forces us to confront the most serious defects in our society.
The problem of crime, I believe, still is rooted in inequality and is rooted in inequity and is rooted in racial discrimination. I think if you look historically at low-income groups, at poverty groups in this country, that whatever the group, at the time of their lowest poverty, their crime was highest, and as they began to move out of that poverty situation, the crime began to reduce, which suggests to me that social reforms, which do something about a decent job at a decent wage, which does something about housing, which does something about health, which does something about one's overall day-to-day living situation. I think that we get in that a reduction in the crime rate.
Well, I wouldn't begin with the question of how you reduce the level of violence. I would begin with the question how you do justice. It seems to me the most important thing we can do is to reaffirm our commitment as a society, black and white, rich and poor, to the reduction of violence and to the punishment of persons who commit violent acts. Not necessarily harsh or repressive punishments, but reasonably swift, reasonably certain ones. That has the initial virtue of reaffirming those moral standards, and the teaching value of that reaffirmation, I think, would be one of the most constructive things we could do. There may be secondary benefits as well. It may be that by punishing swiftly and surely those who commit violent crimes, we will actually reduce the crime rate because this will deter would-be criminals or because it will take certain known offenders off the street. Those are important things. To me, the first objective is doing justice.
It's clear that we need to make gains in social justice as well as criminal justice if we are to get violent crime under control. But it is not clear whether our society is ready to move in that direction. If we look at the typical violent offender and his victim, we see that more often than not, both are poor and black. Probably we have done little to erase violence from American life because violence is concentrated among those our society cares about least.
Those we seem to care least about now include many thousands of Puerto Ricans and other Hispanic people jammed into our inner city slums. Devastated ghettos like the South Bronx in New York City, which look like and may in fact be theaters of urban guerrilla warfare. Here the city authorities and most of the inhabitants have given up. Crime and violence are taken for granted and often go unreported.
Hey, man, what's up? Hey, he's being on
Amidst the broken homes and family failure, gangs and gang loyalty have taken over.
You don't rat on nobody. It's the same thing as here. He got busted for something he did, so he came...
The Roman Kings, for example, a mixed Hispanic and black gang with a female auxiliary, have developed a code to replace establishment values and ethics that they feel have nothing to do with them.
Come here. He's gonna be on trial right here because he's a young king. He's an ex-young king. And right now, at the present moment, he's going on trial because he stuck somebody up in front of our clubhouse. And you don't do that in front of our clubhouse because we go to jail, not him.
These extraordinary black and white videotapes were made by a French writer-producer who spent 3 years in the South Bronx and gained the confidence and trust of the gangs. Her name is Martine Barra. She talked with Carl Stokes.
They have a great sense of morality. For example, if one of them gets money, he will share with the rest of the gang. Or if one of them is in jail and is in jail for a serious case, they will all go out and try to get the money to pay a lawyer. They want the world to know about them. You know, it's like about when you look at the subways and some people get shocked about those kids writing their name, but it's a way to scream, we exist, we are human beings, we want to exist, we are part of the world. It's exactly the same, you know.
Yolanda, interviewed by Martine in the Juvenile Rehabilitation Center. She is a member of a gang, very proud, very tough, wants her baby to be tough too.
You gotta teach your kids how to fight because they're not gonna stand up there and let everybody abuse them. So that's the first thing I'm gonna teach my child. You know, as soon as she gets older and everything, you know, I'm gonna teach her how to fight. You know, I'm gonna teach her how to use a weapon because she's not gonna go out there and just because she's Puerto Rican, the white people are gonna abuse her.
Minerva grew up with violence. She is married. She is expecting a baby next month. She is happy. She now works in a factory.
Your father raped you when you were younger? How old were you?
I don't remember that. See, like, I didn't know too much about street because they always kept me home. If I came 5 minutes late, they were already hitting me or questioning me what I was doing. So, you know, like at the age of 12, my father beat me against the, not at 12, 11, my father beat me against the sink, so I met this lady. So this lady explained me about menstruation and all of that. So then people started talking about sex, you know, like as you get older, you start talking about sex. So then I said, damn, you know, like I started thinking, you know, like I used to hear about intercourse and all that, and I said, but that's what my father's been doing, you know. So then I started from the street, and then like the first thing that happened, like they sold me. So then I said, nah, I'm not gonna hustle for nobody. And I said, if you want, you kill me. And he took and he knocked my teeth out.
Vicky, president of the Roman Queens, 16 years old, facing 15 years in prison as an accessory to murder. Jail is nothing new to her, or her brothers, or her friends. Neither is death.
I got a friend that died. We don't know who shot her. They said she looked like this girl that they had a contract out on, and they shot her 4 times in the back with a 38. You know, I felt like I lost one of my family when she died. And I looked down on her, you know. She was dead, and that's what warmed me to be cool, because I guess I was next. And like I said, God works with funny ways. I guess it was her turn to die. You know, when you die, they change your boxes because the box that you buried in is brand new. And what me and my friends did, we threw dirt and scratched it up. You know, she was in there, we threw dirt and scratched it up so they keep her in the same box. When I used to live in New Jersey, I used to go down there and look at her grave. Right now, it's nothing, you know, it's just her name. She was, you know how she was only 14 when she died. She was only 14.
Martine, from all that you have learned,
What do you think our society has to do if we're going to get rid of gangs and the necessity for them?
I think the society should learn to love them like I learned to love them and I still love them. If the society should start to love them, the gang would become just a family helping each other. They have no place to live most of the time. Their building where they live is burned down. They see everything destroyed. They have to steal to eat. They have to survive every day. They have to fight to survive every day. It's not like that in other classes of the society.
Man, kill him! Kill him, Alfredo! We all gotta stick together and we can't fight against one another. The people that we gotta fight against, we gotta go downtown and fight them.
Violence has the same ripple effect on society as a stone dropped in a still pond. A mugging may result in a victim buying a guard dog for himself. The same mugging on the late Newz may sell 100 guard dogs. Violent crime is terrible for the victim, physically, psychologically, and often financially. It's also terrifying to potential victims. The rest of society didn't worry much about violence when it was largely confined to the ghettos and directed against blacks and Hispanics. Only when it began to spill over the walls and out into the surrounding white neighborhoods in the early 1960s did it become a problem. And as it has spread out from the ghettos, crime has become more violent. The criminals bolder and more vicious, and younger and younger. Only last summer and fall, there were nights when youth gangs rampaged through the streets of Manhattan and Detroit. Robbery, rape, assault, and murder rates have soared, and the fear of violent crime among law-abiding blacks and whites alike has increased even more, especially among those trapped in the high crime areas, trapped by poverty, infirmity, or old age. As violent crime spread outward from city centers through once safe neighborhoods and into suburban and rural areas throughout the country, more went into the fight against it. The total budget for law enforcement in this country in 1960 was a little more than $3 billion. Today, it's 5 times that. But the money, material, and manpower spent by the government have not reduced crime. This has prompted private citizens to fall back on their own resources. This year, private citizens will spend $16 billion protecting themselves and their property. The total, $31 billion, works out at about $150 for every man, woman, and child in America. More money than the federal government spends on science, space technology, agriculture, education, employment, and social services altogether. For those in the business of selling security, from burglar alarms to weapons, business is getting better every day, and it's expected to double by 1980. Like the cost of everything else, the price of violence keeps rising. Individual citizens are protecting themselves. Anthropologists call it the fight response. When man is threatened and unable to flee from danger, he will fight. And today he is threatened, and he is running out of room to flee. According to the latest FBI figures, violent crime is growing at a faster rate in suburban and rural areas than in the big cities. NBC News correspondent Floyd Kalber reports from rural Middle America, Friendship, Wisconsin.
The good life, the safe life. Does it exist anywhere anymore? Many are taking to the back roads of America, people weary of pollution, crime, and violence, seeking safety and the simple life. What they hope to find is disappearing. Where automobiles and television have ended isolation, bringing city people and city ways. Adams County in rural Wisconsin is growing, and growth inevitably brings change. Rising statistics of drug abuse, family quarrels, robberies, rape, murder. 8 homicides here in the last 4 years. Not many by city standards, a lot where there were none. Many people in Friendship, the county seat, are confused and fearful.
Plaintiff versus Robert James Morgan, defendant.
She heard 3 shots. Mrs. Mallison was dead, and the baby had been strangled. It was not quite.
The jury, court finds you guilty of murder of George Mallison.
Morgan told her to...
Why violence here now? It can't be blamed on blacks. There are none. Are guns too plentiful in this hunter's paradise? Are vacationers changing the character of the county?
The people involved were from outside of the area?
Small community. We've got a murderer.
Small, lifeless child who had done nothing.
One guy cut another one's throat.
A lady was stabbed to death.
It's been terrible.
How can this happen? How can this happen to Adams Friendship?
Shooting out front here, shooting down in Brooks. There's been one up in Adams.
It's a scary feeling.
Let's clean it up. Let's get the murderers.
Shotguns.
When they were from the
Double
city.
murder, triple murder.
Rifles sitting around in people's
I would
kitchen.
not hesitate to use it.
It's kind of like living in an armed camp.
Old-timers resent the present, miss the past, and cling to what is left of it. The Adams County Fair.
We don't smoke marijuana in Muskogee. We don't take our trips on LSD. We don't burn our draft cards.
Most people here are reluctant to surrender old values. So townsfolk here play out their lives with a reassuring sameness.
And I'm proud to be an Okie from Muskogee, a place where even squares can have a ball. We still wave Old Glory down at the...
Some things are as enduring as the people themselves, like the pinochle game at Rank's Bar. But small talk in Friendship is changing. The poor grouse about the rich, the old, the young, the old-timers, the newcomers, and vice versa. They whisper of corruption and welfare cheats, gossip about a sex club. Still, they think their town's better than most.
I think this is the most wonderful country in the world.
Preceded. I lived down in Chicago there, and you had to lock your doors, lock your car, have dogs and everything else, so you couldn't even go to bed at night.
Fear of violence was unknown here until Luella Hickey, elderly spinster, was killed 4 years ago. She was the first murder victim, killed by outsider or townsman. Nobody knows. The case is still unsolved.
We got there and found her dead in our bedroom. And she'd been stabbed numerous times. And from then on, we had our first murder.
But just what do you do? And from all of the training that you have had, from all the books you've read, and movies you watched, and so on and so forth, you still trying to put in your mind what do you do first and what should be done and how fast they should be done?
Everybody was worried. Of course, small community, we've got a murderer loose. People loaded shotguns that probably hadn't for a long time. Well, at that time we didn't have what you'd call crooks. We had our Saturday night drunks. We had our Saturday night fights. When I arrived here, they had shotgun, one pistol, had a broken firing pin, as I recall. But the records for the whole department was kept in the back end of the squad car. All they really had was somebody to shake doors at night. In just the city, I've had rape, attempt rapes, assaults, assault with deadly weapon, attempt murders.
2 years after the Hickey murder, there was a double murder. A local man was jailed. Then came the most bizarre killings of all, those of George and Tony Mallison and their baby. The family had come from Chicago, some say, to set up a sex commune. They ran these ads. The result was murder. Tony and George Mallison's bullet-ridden bodies were discovered in the basement. Their baby was found strangled in her crib. Country people began to know city fear. A month later, 2 drifters from the West Coast were arrested and charged. At their trial, Diane Dirks and her lover Robert Morgan blamed each other for the murders. He admitted killing the father.
Upon being found guilty of murder in the first degree, you are hereby sentenced to life imprisonment at the state prison at Waupun.
Outsiders killing outsiders is how townsfolk describe the Mallison deaths. Even teenagers blame city people for much of the violence here.
There's a lot more people coming to this town from the bigger cities where they have been brought up in an environment of crime where they usually lead to more crime.
No matter where you go, you're still not going to get away from it. It's everywhere you go. It's a scary feeling. You don't want to go outside the house or out of town or anything.
9 months later, another murder. No outsiders this time. These teenagers knew victim and killer as well. Deidre Hine was shot by a classmate.
He didn't seem like being a friend, like he'd be the type of person that'd do it. And her, I don't think she had an enemy in the whole school. Everybody liked her. And then it just seemed like, I don't know, something happened and I guess the rest of the world got to her or something, I don't know.
It wasn't a stranger that we welcomed into our home at all. And there was nothing to indicate that there was any violence in this boy. They had a lot of things in common. And this is more or less the frame of things that took place there right up to the day she was killed. She was beautiful. I don't know if I can talk about her.
Deidre's death is fact. Murder is not easy to forget. The county fair is a beginning. People here share pleasure. They also share grief. Unlike the cities, a small community is an extended family, and violence is personal. The pain for all is lasting.
I think it'll take a long time for us to really grasp the full meaning of it. Bob, my husband, subconsciously, he's trying to convince himself that it really didn't happen. It was so senseless. And I don't know why he did it. Perhaps he's given a reason to the authorities, but I haven't heard it. I don't know. I don't know why.
The killer has pled insanity. Whatever the reasons, seemingly senseless murders are happening in rural white areas at a phenomenal rate. So are other violent crimes. Why? Is it drugs? Drinking? Influence of the media? Influx of visitors? In Friendship and Adams County, the stability of rural life is in jeopardy. Affluent newcomers are arousing the discontent of the growing underclass. Unemployment is up. Farmers are finding more profit in real estate than in potatoes. The annual average income here is less than $4,000. That's well below the national level. Discontent, unemployment, poverty.
The people of this county are becoming more and more aware of what their level is financially. And it's becoming more and more apparent to the people in the county that people live differently than they do. They see it on TV every day. The feeling would be somewhat similar to a black person watching TV back in the 60s and was seeing what some of the white people had. A feeling of frustration, a feeling that it's unfair. And when you have tried almost every avenue, the one last avenue to assert yourself is through physical violence.
That's a very fine gun.
This is gun country, the sportsman's heaven. And nobody wants that to change. Not even those families hurt by guns. All but 2 of the victims were shot to death. Audrey Hines' daughter was killed by 4 shots from a rifle.
I do not think it's wrong now at this point in time for people to have guns in their homes available to them. I'm not ashamed to say it. I would not hesitate to use it.
I don't think the gun has got anything to do with it. It's the guy behind the gun.
We've always had guns around this country. Everybody's had them.
I think you can have murder. You can have murder with knives, choking people, or poisoning, anything.
70, 80, 49, 50.
Guns, I don't think, is a major factor.
If there were any guns available, the crooks would have many of them.
I know quite a few of my friends have bought guns and, to protect themselves. Frankly, I think the people in Adams are scared.
We are scared. I don't know how you're going to stop violence, but it must be stopped somewhere, somehow. I don't know how, and neither did my daughter, Deidre.
It is impossible to recapture serenity, for Adams County is a part of today. The people here have tasted the fruit of technology, affluence. Now they must accept the paradox of technology, poverty amidst affluence. They must accept alienation and crime. Adams County is just one more outpost that now shares the climate of fear. And soon there may be no place else to run. But the solutions to violence cannot be found in places, only in people.
The high murder rate in Adams County, Wisconsin may not be typical of rural America, but the rising level of violence is typical of all America. And so are Adams County's guns. For we are the most heavily armed civilian population in the world. Our private arsenal includes at least 40 million handguns, and a majority of citizens polled by NBC News believes that banning handguns would make no difference in preventing crime. 11% go so far as to believe that banning handguns would result in more crime. Another question we asked in the poll was whether our criminal justice system is effective in preventing crime. 2/3 believe it is not effective, which may be one of a number of reasons that there are so many guns in private hands. What would prevent crime? Only a fool would claim to know with certainty. But even if we assume that aggressive behavior is inherent in human nature, it is clear that violence is promoted by broken homes, poverty, and prejudice. Are we bringing violence on ourselves through the kind of society we have? Do we care enough? Tomorrow's crime statistics may answer those questions.